Πείτε μου τουλάχιστον με πόσα κιλομπάιτ φορτώνουμε.
Κόνεξ από τον ΟΤΕ. Σταθερά, γρήγορο και αξιόπιστο ίντερνετ.
The FBI they're not overly friendly, but they're not rude. They're very professional. It's very much a wall. But you knew who was in power. You knew what they were capable of. As when I first started this project, well, it wasn't even a project at the time. It was very much a pragmatic way of me just making sure that I didn't have any further altercations with the law. When it was happening, of course, this was definitely, none of this was actually conscious. And while it's happening, it's much more of a direct reaction. It's more of an instinctive reaction. So it started out as a very practical thing. And then it slowly evolved into this art project. And then now I'm not even sure if this is even art anymore, because now it's no longer some wacky artist doing this. Now there's nearly 1 billion people in the world doing essentially this. Is it protest? I wouldn't say protest in a direct sense, but I think there's multiple definitions of protest, just as there are multiple definitions of art. I'm very interested in art that really pushes the boundaries. One of the things that we forget is all art was contemporary art at the time it was made. And there's different ways of looking at contemporary art today. I'm really interested in work that challenges my viewpoints. I'm interested in looking at something that immediately I say, well, that's not art. And that's when I get excited. The first time I would hear, say, the Kronos Quartet as music. Well, first I heard them, I was like, this is not music. But they completely changed my outlook of what music was. So I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in that opening up. To think back our lives 10 years ago. A mere 10 years ago, that was not very long ago. I don't have a prediction for what's going to happen 10 years from now. But the one thing that I am absolutely certain of, that I know will happen, is that it'll be different. It may not be better, may not be worse, but things will be different. It's going to require different ways of evaluating. We cannot apply the rules of yesterday to the culture of tomorrow. The culture and the technology has changed drastically. So I think that would be a huge challenge for the future. I think just to keeping up with it on a more broader society level. I find this amazing, and my father, who's 65 years old, I mean, he's on chat with me all the time. He's on Facebook. We're not going to get rid of our cell phones. We're not going to get rid of our bank cards. We're not going to actually, we don't even think of those as technology anymore. They've just become part of our daily lives. So there's no way we'll live without those, but it's just things will be different. But I think culturally and technologically, we're doing pretty good. And we learn, human beings learn very quickly. We've adapted very, very quickly. I identify myself as a Muslim, but why is it that someone immediately thinks of 15th century Saudi Arabia? We understand secularism when it applies to Christianity, and we understand secularism when it applies to Judaism. We know that not all Jews are Orthodox Jews, and we know that not all Christians are Orthodox Christians. Why don't we understand secularism when it applies to Islam? It all depends on what our interest and what our commonality is, really. There's different ways of using these tools and technologies, but on the other hand, let's not blame just the social media here. The minute you walk into your house, your electricity company knows you just walked into the door because you just turned the lights on. So even when we think we're not being watched, we're being watched. Google knows you better than anyone else. Again, the problem is not having the information. The problem is what happens to that information afterwards. You know, we're living in a culture where we don't have to delete anything. We really don't have to delete anything, and nothing needs to be deleted because memory is so cheap. So as we're putting more and more information into this digital, which is all searchable, we no longer have a need to forget. That's going to change a lot of things. That's really going to have some significant impact, this ability to never forget. Recently, I was on the Facebook page of a friend that passed away. It's a bizarre, it really is bizarre going in there and watching people interact with this person that we know is no longer there. If this was 40, 50 years ago, we probably would have frozen people's brains or frozen their bodies. And I think we've realized that, well, maybe the body isn't what's important, and what's really important is the information, is the brain. So it's a bizarre way of looking at how information becomes immortal, not necessarily the person. I've always looked at myself as a hybrid, and it's not necessarily of this East or West. It's that I think culturally, all of us pick up bits and pieces here and there and there. And especially during the Industrial Revolution, we needed very specialized cogs for very specialized tasks. And we lost that hybridity at that era. We became these specialized cogs. And in that specialization, even though we've evolved from an industrial age to an information age, we've dematerialized. Historically, we were all farmers. We started out as an agrarian society. We moved from an agrarian society to an industrial society. From an industrial society, now we're in a service or information society. So in that way, as this dematerialization is going away, there's really no reason for us to be locked down to those specific cogs. And we can have a hybrid identity.